Market Prospects, delivering timely information and education to prairie farmers for over 30 years. Market Prospects is brought to you by the University of Saskatchewan's Department of Agricultural and Resource Economics and these sponsors. Log on to marketprospects.usask.ca to view past programs and for information on upcoming programs.
This week in our Market Prospects interview, we take a close look at the pulse crops, peas and beans. Joining us is Brian Clancey, President of Stack Communications. Mr. Clancey, it's a pleasure to again have you on Farmgate.
Thank you, Bob.
So please review 2016 prairie field pea production and current market conditions, and then comment on the movement in prices and ending stocks that might play out over the rest of this crop year.
Last year we harvested a record pea crop, about 4.8 million tons from 4.2 million acres. The crop got in early and they were able to harvest it before the weather turned really bad in the fall. As a result, we've got a lot of good quality product available for the markets. That's even reflected in green peas where there's not enough. Some importers are complaining that there aren't enough bleached green peas available, so it's a statement of the quality of the crop, which is good. Movement has been unbelievable. A bigger proportion of peas have gone than of any of the special crops. As of today, more than half of the crop has been delivered by farmers. Exports are up tremendously to all parts of the world. India remains the #1 destination for peas, but China has come up and they're buying quite a bit more. And this is really good because I think that under the current condition, with India growing many more pulses this year, they may in fact, they've already seeded 5 million hectares more pulses than they have in the past for a new record, and production could hit 22 million metric tons this year for the whole season, 2016-17 season. That's 3 million tons more than the previous record, and that's going to have an impact on demand, but that will not be felt until later in the marketing year, the very end of this marketing year, and more in the fall. There are a few other things going on in India which could also impact the ability to make sales there, but those impacts are not reflected in price yet, and they're not reflected in the market situation yet. So those are pending events.
What's your forecast for Canadian acreage and prices for yellow and green peas for the upcoming crop year?
Total pea area is probably going to be very much unchanged, probably still around 4.2 million acres. And that's just simply because the income performance of peas relative to canola or relative to wheat is really, really good. It's still above average for the recent 3-year average when you do that kind of a comparison. And that's going to help maintain interest in peas. Plus, you've had reasonable prices and excellent movement, and that always encourages people to come into it. However, if you have a return back to average yields, because last year's yields were above average, production could be down maybe around 4.2 million metric tons. And that will, even with an increase in ending stocks from this current season, supply won't be up very much, and that bodes well for the ability to sell next fall. However, you get into the worry about the risk is that if India produces as many chickpeas, Desi-type chickpeas this winter as it looks like, then export demand in the fall shipping period could be down. That's why we have to look at opportunities like growth in China and other parts of the world, and those are positives.
What factors should farmers consider when looking at contracting opportunities for peas in terms of both price and movement?
There's not a lot you can do about price. When I think about it, if it's profitable, then it's worth considering contracting a certain portion of what you're going to grow. But the other important component of that is that you need to know that the company is going to guarantee delivery opportunity shortly after harvest. You don't want to enter into a contract where delivery is open-ended, because if markets were to go below the contract price, you want them to take those peas so you can realize the profit which is the reason you signed the contract in the first place, and you don't want a company to have the capacity to defer delivery until after December or something like that. So that's the most important consideration for contracting, whether you're selling a production contract or a flat price contract.
What's been happening with prairie faba bean and soybean production in markets, and what do you see for these crops on the prairies in 2017?
Soybeans are Soybean area in Canada is going to be up. It's going up in Manitoba. It will be up again this year in Saskatchewan. And that's just part of an overall increase in soybean production all around the world. I think the one key advantage about soybeans is that you have the ability to look 2 or 3 years in the future and build the crop into a marketing plan because you know what the value is going to be. So it's easier to work with your bank and your other managers about business plans that go into the future, and you can, it works well in terms of business planning. Beyond that, I think you also, when you're trying to market it, you have to be sensitive to the kind of basis levels that companies are offering you, and that backs off of the futures market. So that's the main consideration there. Faba bean production will probably be up this year. Last year was a bit of a disaster in many areas, but I think that area will increase, not substantially, but it will go up. However, there's 2 types of faba beans, the low tannin type, which is suitable for feed markets, and that's probably the easiest one for growers to market overall. The other one, which is the food type, which should be getting a premium, is the high tannin faba beans, the ones that are brown when you harvest them. There's a lot of competition in the world right now. Australia's harvested a record crop of faba beans, and they're marketing that all over the world. Production in the UK and France was down from last year, and they had problems, disease problems, which impaired the quality of their crops, so they're not as competitive on world markets, but Australia is running the show. However, the biggest problem that you have with faba beans for export is that there's one country which buys 90% of the crop, and that's Egypt. And Egypt, it would be okay, but Egypt is having economic problems, and exporters are reporting payment problems with the country, so you have to be brave to export there. And because of the small size of the crop, there's not a lot of companies involved in it just yet. And until more companies get involved, there won't be more market development around the world. And that's what we really need to encourage growers to expand production of faba beans. But we need them to expand to get the companies in. So it's a conundrum.
Great information. Thanks again, Mr. Clancey.
You're very much welcome, Bob. Thank you.
Farmgate returns after a short commercial break.